Women and their children leaving abusive relationships find shelter and support from Women's Crisis Services. They are unique in operating the only shelters for women fleeing domestic abuse in the Waterloo region. Haven House in Cambridge and Anselma House in Kitchener.
Women's Crisis Services is committed to reaching out and informing every resident in Waterloo region about our agency and the services we provide for abused women and their children. We're especially interested in reaching 18 to 25-year-olds and their friends and families so that we can work together in collaboration to help break the intergenerational cycle of violence. And in addition to shelter, we also offer outreach services and education to help women in such abusive situations.
Women's Crisis Services helps women in many ways. Many women first contact Women's Crisis Services by calling one of its crisis lines that are open 24/7. A worker listens to the woman's situation and provides options for her to consider. An important step is creating an individualized safety plan for her and her children, regardless if she plans to leave home or not. Once a woman arrives at the shelter, she meets with a caring, supportive worker. She is normally provided with her own personal space for herself and her children. At the shelter, the support is ongoing and advocacy continues around legal needs, housing, parenting, and transitioning towards independence for themselves and their children.
A lot of people don't realize that Women's Crisis Services also works with women who remain in the family home, as well as those who have discharged from the shelter and are still seeking assistance from our agency. We offer assistance both individually and through group support. We try to educate the women about the signs of abuse, the impact on their children, as well as helping them to recognize and make decisions about leaving an abusive relationship. In addition to the education that all of our staff provide, we are building online communities that provide resources through our website as well as our blog.
Abuse can take many forms. Abuse includes verbal, emotional, psychological, spiritual, sexual, and financial abuse, as well as physical abuse. Abuse also includes forms of control, isolation, manipulation, threats, and cruelty towards animals. You can help Women's Crisis Services of Waterloo Region help abused women move beyond violence.
Women's Crisis Services is reaching out to each of you to help us work in collaboration to inform women and their children of the signs of abuse, to inform them of the services that Women's Crisis Services provides, and to help us together work to help abused women and their children move beyond violence. We're also seeking your financial assistance. As a not-for-profit charitable organization, it is essential to depend on the community to sustain our operations. The community is very generous. We thank you for every donation you have given us. No donation is ever too small. Thank you for working in collaboration to end violence against women.
Learn more about Women's Crisis Services of Waterloo Region online at wcswr.org. In an abusive relationship and need help? Or know someone who is? Call Women's Crisis Services of Waterloo Region Crisis Line in Cambridge at 519-653-2422. In Kitchener-Waterloo at 519-742-5894.